Okay, so good morning, everyone. So we had seen yesterday about the Stone Age, right? Uh, we had just for a quick, a recap that we had studied about the sources of understanding history. That how do we understand what happened in such a distant past, right? That how what things happened in such a distant past, so that we understand through our literary sources, right? Through the archaeological sources, as well as through oral traditions, right? Okay. And then moving ahead, that we saw uh, that the earliest phase of human history is the Stone Age, and the Stone Age divided into the Paleolithic, Mesolithic, and Neolithic age. From the Paleolithic to the Mesolithic age, that humans were nomadic people, we were wandering people, right? And it was only that during the Neolithic age, with agriculture starting, right? With the beginning of agriculture, that people started living in settled habitation. For example, which was the first uh, Neolithic village? Mehergarh in Pakistan, right? And then in Kashmir, then in UP, other places, we saw the list of different Neolithic sites, right? Okay. Then we had just seen that there were some other cultures as well which were based on stone, right? And then we saw parallelly that when Neolithic culture started, in fact, in some of the regions, that there was a surplus agriculture practiced, and that resulted into the Indus Valley civilization, right? Okay. So see, let's first take down the list of other stone-based cultures. That which were the other stone-based cultures? The other stone-based cultures. They were first, say, the Chalcolithic age. First, the Chalcolithic age. What is the meaning of Chalcolithic? Chalcolithic comes from the two words chalco. Chalco is copper, and lith is stone. So we know that because copper being a metal, and copper was the first metal known to the mankind. The first metal known to mankind was copper. So people started mixing copper with metal because metals can be beaten into sheet, metals can be drawn into wire, and therefore that there was a mixing of metal and copper. Metal and stone, copper and stone, and therefore we have this Chalcolithic age. This was from around 1800 before Christ up to 1000 before Christ was the Chalcolithic age. It was primarily agrarian in nature, that people used to practice agriculture. It was primarily agrarian in nature, and also that this age was very rich in pottery making. So it started advanced pottery making. It practiced advanced pottery making. Okay. So, for example, the potteries that were made in Neolithic age, they were simple pottery. They were not made using a potter's wheel. They were handmade pots. They were not polished. They were not painted. But the pottery in Chalcolithic age, it was polished, it was painted, it was made using a potter's wheel. So it was a far more advanced pottery making during the Chalcolithic era as compared to the Neolithic era. Okay. And agriculture, that this was primarily an agricultural society, it was primarily an agrarian society. Now, this was mainly in the western part of India. This was in regions like Rajasthan, because copper is found in Rajasthan. राजस्थान में कॉपर मिलता है. देयर इज अ क्षेत्री माइन, CHETRI, या उसको खेतरी भी बोलते हैं. Khetri. So there is a Chetri or a Khetri mine in Rajasthan where copper ore is mined. Mining of copper ore happens. Okay. And because of that, copper which was available in Rajasthan, that people started mixing copper with stone and they came out with tools which were made by combining copper and stone, therefore the Chalcolithic age. The regions nearby Rajasthan, for example, it was even there in Maharashtra, parts of Gujarat, etc. So all the neighboring states of Rajasthan, they saw the rise of Chalcolithic culture. So basically, what is Chalcolithic culture? See, when Chalcolithic culture is there, it's not defined by the time. There were many other reasons. For example, say an Assam, a West Bengal was not in Chalcolithic age. An Assam and a Bengal never saw a Chalcolithic age. Chalcolithic age is typical of the western part of India where we find copper ore reserves, right? Where we find the copper reserves. Okay. So for this reason, the Chalcolithic age existed in these regions. Okay. Some of the prominent cultures, culture is a way of life, right? Some of the prominent cultures that came up during the Chalcolithic age are, for example, the Jorwe culture, the Ketha culture. So these cultures, they came during the Chalcolithic age. That means, for example, say if a culture develops at Itanagar, it will be called as Itanagar culture. So cultures belonging to the Chalcolithic age like Jorwe culture, Ketha culture, etc. There, one of the most prominent village of Chalcolithic age was Inam Gaon. Inam Gaon in Maharashtra was a prominent village of Chalcolithic age. Okay. Inam Gaon in Maharashtra, it was a prominent village of the Chalcolithic age. Moving ahead, the second stone-based culture is the megalithic age. Is the megalithic age. Megalithic age, it is from 1000 before Christ up to 600 before Christ. From 1000 before Christ to 600 before Christ. Now, this time period 1000 before Christ is a very, very critical time period. So whenever you see this time 1000 before Christ, you know, we'll pay attention that iron, the use of iron began in 1000 BC. Before this, mankind was using only copper and other metals like gold, silver, which are not very hard metals, right? Which are not very hard metals. But iron is a very hard metal. Iron can be used to make very, very sophisticated agricultural tools, and iron can be used to make sophisticated weapons, right? You never see a dao of copper, है ना? Iron का sword होता है, iron का dao होता है, right? So that iron can be used to make sophisticated agricultural tools. Iron can be used to make sophisticated weapons. And because of that, see, agriculture, the practice of agriculture already started when? Neolithic age. The practice of agriculture started, but agriculture was very, very subsistence. It was very primitive, right? That agriculture was subsistence, agriculture was primitive. But once in even other parts of India, that once people will start to use iron, so they will make iron tiller. So वो आयरन से टिलिंग करेंगे. अब वुडन टिलर नहीं होगा, आयरन टिलर्स होंगे. So we will be able to till the soil deep. We will be able to plow the soil deep, and therefore that there would be a proper mixing of nutrients of the subsoil with the topsoil. So we will be able to utilize the nutrition of the soil, the nutrients present in the soil in a better manner once we start to use iron agricultural tools, right? And once people start to use iron agricultural tools, agricultural prosperity increases. And we know that for agriculture, that it was because of agriculture that we started to lead a settled life. When nomadic people are attacked, they have two choices. When nomadic people are attacked, they have two choices. Either they fight, or if they suspect that they can be defeated, then they can run away as well. Yes or no? They can run away as well. Nomadic people, if, for example, when we were hunters, food gatherers, animal rearers, we can run away with our animal. But then when we became settled dwellers, when we started to practice agriculture, then probably we have to fight for our agricultural crop. Or else, if we run away, we cannot take the agricultural land with ourselves. Agricultural land is not a movable property, it is an immovable property, right? Agricultural land is not a movable property, it is an immovable property. So for that reason, that now the only condition, the only option, the only solution if the communities were attacked was that we have to fight for our agricultural land, right? The best site is from first row. Come here. Okay. That we have to fight, that we have to fight for our agricultural land. And now we are able to fight as well. Why we are able to fight? Because we have iron weapons. अब 1000 BC के बाद सिर्फ क्या है? That economy will rise, that we will have agricultural production rising up, but then at the same time that there will be a lot of wars fought because people will start to use sophisticated iron weapons, right? So prosperity will increase, but then at the same time that kings will also become powerful because of their defense, their military, the modern equipments. Fine. Okay. So remember megalithic age. So it has iron. Chalcolithic age, will it have iron? No. Neolithic age, will Neolithic people use iron? No. So they did not use iron. So over here, the most important thing is that use of iron began. And it was megalith. Mega is large, lith is stone. So large stone pieces were used. Large stone pieces were used. This civilization was mainly in Deccan and South India. Deccan is Maharashtra region. Deccan and South. So this was in Maharashtra, this was in Karnataka, this was in Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh. So in Deccan and South, that we had this megalithic age. People used to use large stone tools, large stone pieces, and mainly the large stone pieces were used for what? They were used for fortification of places of burial. They were used for fortification of the places of burial. Okay, so that's the megalithic age, not that important. But now, let me take you through that what all things we have seen till now. I'm careful of not including Bangladesh in India. Okay, let's not breach other countries' sovereignty. Okay, so this is difficult for me to draw. So over here, that we have seen that if I talk about the Neolithic age, what is Neolithic age time period roughly? 5,000 to 2,000 around, right? From around 5,000 to 2,000. So during Neolithic age, that people started practicing agriculture, and in western part of India, in western part of India, after the Neolithic age, we have Chalcolithic age, and in southern part of India, that after 1000 BC, we have the megalithic age in this period. But then we are going back to again why I reached up to megalithic, because I just wanted to touch upon the other stone based cultures as well. The other stone based cultures, that after the Stone Age, did we have any other stone based culture or not? So we did have Chalcolithic age and megalithic age. But the important topic that we now come down to is that, as we saw yesterday, that when people from these hills, they came down to the plain areas, this plain area had multiple water resources and very, very fertile soil. And because of this, the agriculture, which otherwise in other regions of India was subsistence only for self use, that this agriculture, because of the fertile soil, and because of ample water resources, that this agriculture became a surplus agriculture. Surplus on any one field results into generation of other economic activity, and therefore it resulted into development of a very prosperous and an urban civilization called the Indus Valley civilization, right? So that will be our topic for today, a very important topic from Stone Age. Just see, when I'm telling you, I just want you to get an idea. It's very important to have an idea, a sense of direction when you start your preparation with. But if I say that no questions have come from this topic, there is no guarantee that it will not come. Generally, if you look at the past 4 5 years of UPSC or the last 2 years of APPSCC, that questions have not come on Stone Ages, right? Okay. But questions have always come on Indus Valley civilization. So starting with Indus Valley civilization. Okay. Starting with Indus Valley civilization. Now, Indus Valley civilization, if you look at the earliest phase of Indus Valley civilization, it started from 2900 before Christ itself. But then the matured phase of Indus Valley civilization, when trade and commerce really prospered, that was the year 2500 before Christ around. And it continued to exist till 1750 before Christ. Okay, the early phase started in 2900 itself, and the matured phase of Indus Valley civilization, when we see multiple cities of Indus Valley civilization emerging, that was 2500 before Christ, and it declined in around 1750 before Christ. Okay, Indus Valley civilization. Let us first look at the geographical location. Right. Let's start with the geography of IVC. That what was the geographical location of Indus Valley civilization? The geography of IVC. It spread over 1.2 million square kilometer. 1.2 million square kilometer. 1 million is 10 lakhs, so 12 lakh square kilometer. So obviously any civilization that spreads over 12 lakh kilometer, 12 lakh square kilometer, it will not be monoracial, it will be multiracial, it will be multi-ethnic, right? That the civilization will be multi-ethnic, the civilization will be multi-racial in nature. So it was not a monoracial or mono-ethnic society. Multiple communities lived over here. Okay, multiple communities, they lived over here. And where they were located, let's look at the territorial expanse of Indus Valley civilization. On the paper, this is north, this is south, this is east, and this is west. The northernmost city was Manda. Manda is in Jammu and Kashmir. The easternmost city was Alamgir. Alamgir is in UP. The southernmost city was Damabad. Damabad is in Maharashtra. And the westernmost city was Sutka Gender. Sutka Gender was in Pakistan. Now, the largest concentration of cities was around this northwestern part of India. Largest concentration was in northwestern part of India and present day Pakistan. But then because this Indus Valley civilization, what was the backbone of Indus Valley civilization? What was the backbone? Surplus agriculture. Everything started because of the surplus in agriculture. Surplus agriculture resulted into trade and commerce, and therefore trade and commerce was the another strong pillar of Indus Valley civilization. Trade and commerce was another strong pillar of Indus Valley civilization. And trade and commerce jab bhi hoga, that means you will develop a relation with new places. Yes or no? Because traders will look to expand their trade and commerce to new regions. Traders will look to expand their trading relation with new markets, and therefore that is how you see that a civilization which started, a civilization that emerged in the northwestern part of India, a civilization that started along the river Indus and its 5 different tributaries, a civilization that started around river Indus and its 5 different tributary. Tributary किसको बोलते हैं? A river that joins the main river, right? That is called as a tributary river. है ना? A river that joins the main river, that is called a tributary river. Okay. So the river Indus has 5 different tributaries. Can anybody name? Chenab, Jhelum, Satluj, Ravi, and Beas. Right? In fact, the land between two rivers, when you are taught geography, there, Pandey sir will tell you that the land between two rivers is called a doab. दो नदी के बीच का region doab. Land between two rivers is called a doab, and that is why the land between 5 different tributaries, the land of 5 rivers, is the state of Punjab. Panj is a Punjabi word for 5. So Punjab. So that is why the state got its name from the land of 5 rivers. Chenab, Jhelum, Satluj, Ravi, and Beas, which are the tributaries of the river Indus. Now, this Indus Valley civilization, it grew from the northwestern part of India right up to Maharashtra, right up to Uttar Pradesh. Why? Because it started establishing trade relations with these regions, and these regions also got integrated with Indus Valley, the area around Indus Valley, right? The area around Indus Valley. So that is how it kept on increasing its territorial expansion hote gaya. Fine. But it started where? From Indus and its 5 tributaries, and then kept on expanding up to UP, Maharashtra as well. Fine. Just for your lateral knowledge, you can write down that river Indus has 5 tributaries, namely Chenab, Jhelum, Satluj, Ravi, and Beas. Okay. Chenab, Jhelum, Satluj, Ravi, and Beas. That these are the 5 tributary rivers. Tributary river is a river that joins the main river. So this is the geography of Indus Valley civilization. Can I erase this? moving ahead, the economy of Indus Valley civilization. What were the economic practices, the economy of Indus Valley civilization? The backbone of economy was surplus agriculture. The backbone of economy was surplus agriculture. The backbone of the economy was surplus agriculture. Okay. And because of surplus agriculture, what all things happened? That there was trade and commerce, because any surplus will be traded, right? A surplus has to be traded. So because of the surplus agriculture, that there was trade and commerce. And trade and commerce is an urban feature. That is why Indus Valley civilization is also called an urban civilization. That Indus Valley civilization is also called an urban civilization. Besides trade and commerce, the feature of surplus, because there was surplus, and hence that this surplus led to a variety of other economic activities. Variety of other economic activities. What are the other economic activities that happened? Say, first, as people had surplus, so they had all the kind of fancy choices. They wanted to buy sculpture, have decoratives in their houses. So there began the practice of sculpture making. Sculpture, murti banana, sculpture making. And the sculptures, they were mainly made up of an alloy of copper, which is called as bronze. Most of these sculptures were made up of bronze, for this reason that Indus Valley civilization, it belongs to the Bronze Age. It does not belong to Stone Age. It does not belong to Chalcolithic Age. It belongs to Stone Age. This is an urban civilization. Okay, that this was an urban civilization, and it belonged to the Bronze Age. Now, sculpture making started, and most of the sculptures were made up of bronze. How they made this sculpture? That they used a technology called as the lost wax technique. They used a technique called the lost wax technique. What is this lost wax technique? I'll tell you. Like, suppose if I have to make a sculpture, I have to make a sculpture of this water bottle. Suppose. Now tell me, which is easy to work upon, bronze और wax? किसके ऊपर आप आसानी से उसको shape size दे सकते हैं? Wax, it can be cut easily, right? So first, people used to make a wax statue of this water bottle. Suppose ये मेरा wax statue of water bottle है. Now, metals can be beaten into sheet. Yes or no? Metal को थोड़ा सा heat करके, it can be beaten into sheet. So what the people used to do, that after making a wax statue, after making a wax water bottle, that they would beat up a sheet of bronze over it. That they would place a sheet of bronze over it. And because metals can be beaten into sheet, so this was covered with a sheet of bronze. And then once it has settled on this, once the sheet of bronze got perfectly set on the wax statue, after that a small hole will be made. A small hole will be made in the bronze statue, because now what is this bottle? This is a bronze statue. Within the bronze statue, you have a wax body, right? Now, by putting a hole over here, it was put on fire, which will melt first. Bronze or wax? Wax. So the wax will get lost, and then you allow, and then what is left is a hollow andar khali rahega, is a hollow statue of bronze. That is why the name lost wax technique. Am I clear to everyone? Right? Okay, good. That the lost wax technique was used to make bronze sculptures. Most of the sculptures are made up of bronze. Therefore, we will not make an effort to remember those sculptures which were made up of bronze. We will rather learn the exceptional ones. Exceptional ones, right? For example, when we look through the cities, the list of cities, Harappa, in Harappa, we get a image of the torso of a nude man that is in red sandstone. It is not in bronze. तो उसको हमें याद करना होगा, right? उसे हमें याद करना होगा. For example, in Mohenjo-daro, we get an image of a bearded priest. दाढ़ी है जिस priest की, bearded priest. So that is in a stone called steatite. वो याद करना होगा. और बाकी जो हमने नहीं याद किया है, we can assume that that is made up of bronze. UPSC 2024 asked a question that the image of dancing girl found is made up, it is found in Mohenjo-daro, was made up of which of the following material, right? Was made up of which of the following material? It was a bronze image of a dancing girl, right? The question that I asked yesterday also. So the questions are very, very factual, right? Questions are very, very factual, right? And I have already told you that analysis of history is a very, very risky domain, because our interpretation, history is no science, right? History is no science. So analysis of history can differ. For example, what do we understand as the first war of independence? Which event is called as popularly the first war of independence? Anybody? The revolt of 1857, hai na? But then there are many battles which have happened before the revolt of 1857. Some years back, that the Deputy Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh had requested the government of India to declare the Anglo-Khamti War 1839 to be called as the first war of independence. The Orissa government had requested the government of India to declare the Pike Rebellion of Orissa as the first war of independence. It is very subjective a call. It was a freedom fighter called V.D. Savarkar who called the revolt of 1857 as the first war of independence. You and I can differ, right? So remember in history that analytical questions can or have the risk of, having multiple interpretations. So those questions don't come. The questions are purely one word answer fact, right? Purely one word answer and factual in nature. Okay, coming back. So sculpture making, which was mostly made up of bronze, and the technique used was the lost wax technique. Second, पैसा आएगा, एक तो मूर्ति खरीदेंगे, दूसरा ornaments, right? So ornament making or jewelry making. So jewelry making started, and mostly the jewelry was the bead based jewelry, something very similar to our local ornaments. That bead based jewelry, it was done similar, like very similar to what we have jewelries, the local ornaments, interlocking of beads. So bead ornaments, so beads based ornaments, they were the most common among the jewelry. But yes, we also had gold and silver jewelry. We also had gold and silver jewelry. Okay. That there was metal based work. So metal industry was also there. For example, which all metals? Say gold is a metal. So gold was used, copper was used. Although bronze is an alloy, that is a mixture of a metal and non-metal, but still I'm writing here that bronze was used. Was iron used? Yes or no? Why no? Sorry. Now, how do you know that iron was not used? Because what is the time period? It ended in 1750 BC. So is it before 1000 BC or after 1000 BC? 1750 years before the birth of Christ. वो पहले होगा या 1000 years before the birth of Christ? Which is earlier? 1750 before Christ or 1000 before Christ? 1750 before Christ. Yes or no? So that means that till this time, if we move on the timeline, till this time, iron was not known to people itself, right? Iron was not known to people. So remember that over here, please write separately that they did not know the use of iron. No iron, so that you remember. UPSC, I think 2016 asked a question that if you just remember this thing, that iron was not known to the people of Indus Valley civilization, you could have solved the answer, right? You could have solved the answer. That no iron was not known to them. Okay. Fourth, other, for example, yesterday I gave you an example that Indus Valley civilization was the only civilization in this world to have a two-story building. Very good. Two-story building. And why they were able to make two-story building? Because they used burnt bricks. So brick manufacturing was one important economic activity. And what kind of bricks they are making? Burnt bricks. Because of the burnt bricks, they were able to make even two-story building. Right? Because of the burnt bricks that they were able to make even a two-story building. What other economic activities? We see that there was extensive trade and commerce with even other parts of the world. So how will they take their goods to other parts of the world? Through ship. And through ship, we will study that there was a city called Lothal. Lothal had the world's first artificial dockyard. Dockyard, jahan ship aake rukega. So they must be making ships as well. So shipbuilding was one important economic activity. Shipbuilding was one important economic activity. Sixth, sorry. Pottery making also became very evolved. Pottery making also became very evolved during the Indus Valley civilization. Their pottery was also advanced pottery. That they used potter's wheel. Handmade pots nahi hote the. They used potter's wheel. They used a potter's wheel to make the pottery. Okay. And their pots were painted as well as uske upar polish bhi kiya rehta tha. Painted and polished. So their pottery making, it was advanced pottery making, painted plus polished. Okay. And they used a potter's wheel to make the pottery. Okay. For pottery making, they used potter's wheel. Okay. Seventh, terracotta making. What is terracotta? Anybody? Terracotta किससे बनता है? Clay, है ना? It's basically baked clay. Terracotta making is use of baked clay. Okay. Terracotta making is use of baked clay. So they used clay to make images. है ना? मूर्ति बनाते थे. And which image is mostly made in terracotta? Terracotta images of that we find images of mother goddess. Images of mother goddess in terracotta. Mother goddess was the most important deity. Deity is Bhagwan, hai na? That mother goddess was the most important deity of Indus Valley civilization. and we find her images, remember, not in bronze. We find her images not in bronze, but in terracotta, which is baked clay, right? We find the images in terracotta, which is baked clay. Okay. If you have copied this, can I erase? Eighth. Now, this is very important. Seal making. Seal making was very important economic activity because every civilization back in those era had its own traditional seal. It had its own typical seal. For example, today, if I say that, say, Ashok Stambh with the Ashok Chakra, right, in the national emblem of India, वो एक हमारा emblem है. Similarly, Indus Valley civilization का एक अपना symbol होता था, एक अपना seal होता था, right? So every civilization had its own seal. For example, the seal of Mesopotamia, the seal of Mesopotamia was cylindrical. The seal of Persia, Iran, was circular, button shaped. The seal of Indus Valley civilization, it was rectangular or square. ये rectangular या square seals होते थे. And seals, they were mostly made up of a soft stone called steatite. Okay, they were made up of a soft stone called steatite. Okay, made up of a soft stone called steatite. Now, seal making was very important. It was generally rectangular in shape, right? Seals had multiple purposes. If you look at the purpose of seal, it had multiple purposes. That A, it was characteristic of the civilization, that just by looking at the seal we could say that this seal belongs to which civilization. And in case of Indus Valley civilization, that what were the purposes of seals? They were used in trade and commerce. They were used in trade and commerce. But remember, when I say that they were used in trade and commerce, they are not to be misunderstood as coins. They are not coins. So what is the first no that we have written? That Indus Valley people did not know the use of iron. The second no, that Indus Valley people did not use coins or currency. This seal was basically used as a barter exchange. See, what is a coin? What is a currency? A coin or a currency is something which has a fixed value, which has a very standard value. For example, the 10 rupee coin today in Arunachal, in Gujarat, anywhere in India has the same value, 10 rupee. It has a standard design. But then back then, the seals did not have a fixed value. Therefore, we cannot call them as coins. Okay, so they are not coins. Second, no. Third, that the seals, they were also used to mark a ownership of property. So they were used to mark ownership of property. आप में से कोई मूवी देखा है मोहनजोदारो? There was a movie Mohenjo-daro, right? Those who have seen the movie, although not worth being watched, but still, that if you have seen the movie, वहां पे, if I tell you the story, you will remember. Indus Valley towns क्या होते थे? Indus Valley towns, that they had a lower town, and then there was a raised platform, और raised platform पे एक upper town होता था. Upper town. Generally, the more privileged sections of society used to live on upper town. There are many reasons. One can be a एक generally आप देखेंगे that if you live at a citadel, at a raised platform, that is symbolic of a sociological dominance, है ना? And also that it can also be because second reason could be that probably those who were more privileged were able to afford to raise the platform and make a house on it, right? Make a house on it. Why it was necessary? Because we are in Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley with its 5 tributaries would be very prone to floods. और फ्लड आने पे कौन सा घर बचेगा जो थोड़ा हाइट पे रहेगा, है ना? So that could also have been a reason that why that the privileged people used to live on an upper town, because that they deliberately जो raised platform होता है उसको बोलते हैं citadel. Raised platform is called citadel. So the privileged people made their houses on a citadel, on a raised platform. The privileged people, they made their houses on a citadel, on a raised platform. Okay, on a raised platform. And because the privileged people lived in the raised platform, so the guard would not allow the ordinary people to enter the upper town. Who were allowed to enter the upper town? Only those who had a property on the upper town. And how would the guard get to know that yes, you are the person who has the authority to enter the upper town? You are the person who has a property on the upper town, because all the people with their houses on the upper town would be issued a seal. है ना? वो ऋतिक रोशन की पॉकेट से निकलता है सील, है ना? यूनिकॉर्न वाला, यूनिकॉर्न जो वो वन हॉर्न बुल होता है, क्योंकि वो दैट वाज वन ऑफ द मोस्ट वर्शिप्ड एनिमल. जब रिलीजन पढ़ेंगे तो पढ़ेंगे दैट पीपल ऑफ इंडस वैली वर नेचर वर्शिपर्स, दे यूज्ड टू वर्शिप प्लांट्स एंड एनिमल्स. इसीलिए सील के ऊपर यूनिकॉर्न का फोटो है ना. सो that seal, somebody who had that seal will be allowed to enter the upper town. Why? Because it marked the ownership of property within bracket on the upper town. Am I clear? On the upper town. Used to mark the ownership of property on the upper town. Next. So क्या क्या purpose है? Used in trade and commerce, used to mark ownership of property on the upper town. It was also used to depict, and this is very important, used to depict the male god whose name was Pashupati god. Was also used to depict the Pashupati god. So this seals had a religious significance as well. So there is a Pashupati seal which was found. The Pashupati seal, उस seal पर क्या है? That on the seal, okay, that on the Pashupati seal, that there is image of a person sitting in a yogi posture. एक आदमी योगी पोस्चर में बैठा हुआ है. He has three-headed horn-like structure. He had three-headed horn-like structure, right? Are you looking for somebody? That the person who is sitting in a yogi posture has a three horn headed figure and is cross-legged. पालथी मार के बैठा हुआ है, cross-legged, है ना? And there are 4 animals surrounding his face. There are 4 animals surrounding his face. You have a tiger, you have an elephant, you have a rhino, and you have a bull. Right? Tiger, elephant, rhino, and a bull. The 4 animals surrounding his face. And then at his feet are 2 deer. Why I'm telling you all these details? Because many a times very, very dirty questions are asked in exam. Which of the 4 animals are surrounding the face of Pashupati on the seal of Indus Valley civilization? Right? So there are 4 animals surrounding the face of Pashupati: tiger, rhino, elephant, and sorry, buffalo, not bull. Buffalo. Yeah. Not bull, buffalo. So these Four animals are surrounding the face of Pashupati god. Four animals. So write down what is Pashupati seal. That a person sitting in yogi posture, a person sitting in a yogi posture in a cross-legged position. कहते हैं ना कभी जमीन पे जैसे खाना खाने के लिए बैठते हैं क्रॉस लेग करके बैठते हैं in a cross-legged position with four animals surrounding his face with four animals surrounding his face namely tiger with four animals surrounding his face namely tiger, elephant, rhino and buffalo. Okay, yes please, it's all right. Okay, the four animals surrounding his face. Okay, and two animals, that is two deer, placed at his feet. Two deer, hiran, placed at his feet. When this picture, basically ये एक इंडियन आर्कियोलॉजिस्ट था, उसको ये सील गिरा हुआ मिला कहीं पर, and he brought this seal to the then head of the Archaeological Survey of India, whose name was John Marshall. जब जॉन मार्शल ने ये पशुपति सील देखा, जॉन मार्शल ने जब ये पशुपति सील देखा, he called Pashupati as proto Shiva because in appearance he looked like Shiva. So Pashupati was called as proto Shiva by John Marshall. Who called Pashupati as proto Shiva? John Marshall. So John Marshall was the archaeologist who called Pashupati as proto Shiva. Okay, Pashupati as proto Shiva. So it is used to depict the Pashupati seal, and also it was used as an amulet. What is an amulet? Used as an amulet. Amulet is tabiz, है ना? Amulet is put on, amulet is worn to keep the evil forces away, right? That an amulet is worn to keep the evil forces away. Okay, that it is put on to keep the evil forces away. That also reflects upon the religious belief of Indus Valley people, that they believed in a positive and a negative spirit. So probably that they were spirit worshippers as well, that they followed an animistic religion, a nature worshipping religion, as well as animistic religion, that they worshipped spirit as well, right? Okay. So these are the uses of seals, and seal making was an important economic activity. Apart from that, other economic activities like trade and commerce was done, because that we used to import precious and semi-precious stones to make jewelry, and we used to export the food products, the agricultural products. In fact, Indus Valley civilization was known for its surplus cotton cultivation. So in the field of agriculture, that it was known for cotton cultivation and cotton trade. Cotton cultivation and cotton trade. Why are they cultivating cotton? Because whenever you have surplus production, what will you do with the surplus food production? खाना तो limited ही खाएंगे ना. So once we achieve a food security, that people tend to produce the non-food crops, the non-edible crops, right? So that means that Indus Valley people had achieved food security. That is why they were producing, for that reason, that they were producing cotton in large quantity, and they were exporting cotton from India to other parts of the world as well. How do we know? that there was an extensive trade and commerce? Because we find the seals of other cultures in Indus Valley. Indus Valley seals were rectangular, but from two cities, Mohenjo-daro as well as Kalibangan, we have found the Mesopotamian seals. इसका मतलब क्या है? मेसोपोटामिया के ट्रेडर्स आते होंगे इंडिया, इंडस वैली, और इंडस वैली के ट्रेडर्स जाते होंगे मेसोपोटामिया. Similarly, we find the Persian Gulf seal, वो बटन शेप्ड होता है, ये शर्ट के बटन शेप. So the Persian Gulf seal, the button-shaped seal, is found in Lothal, Gujarat. So probably that there would be trade between Gujarat and Iran, Persia. It's close by as well, by the sea. So there was international trade and commerce as well during Indus Valley civilization. So this economic prosperity was at the base of this flourishing civilization called as Indus Valley civilization. Fine. Third, talking about the polity of Indus Valley civilization. See, Indus Valley civilization was not a contiguous civilization. Contiguous matlab, say for example today in the modern nation states today, for example, Arunachal Pradesh is a contiguous state. So be it Itanagar, right? Be it Upia, be it Hoj, right? Be it Yajali, be it Zero, throughout Arunachal Pradesh. But then Indus Valley civilization was not like that. Indus Valley civilization was that the city of Itanagar is a part of Indus Valley civilization. The city of Zero is Indus Valley civilization, but all the places in between are probably in Neolithic age. क्योंकि वहां पर क्या है? Surplus agriculture नहीं है. The people are not doing trade and commerce. They are still living a kind of a primitive life, not an advanced life like the cities of Indus Valley civilization. So only the urban pockets, only the urban cities were a part of the Indus Valley civilization. The rural areas were not a part of the Indus Valley civilization. So it was not a contiguous matlab sata hua. It was not a contiguous civilization, and therefore there was no single central political authority. There was no one single king of the entire Indus Valley civilization. Am I clear? Because it was not a contiguous civilization. Pata chala, like suppose if we have Indus Valley civilization in Arunachal, then suppose Itanagar, Pasighat, Alo, Tawang, right, Bomdila, only these regions, only these urban places are a part of the Indus Valley civilization, but the rest is still in Neolithic age, right? The rest is still in Neolithic age. And for that reason, that the entire Indus Valley civilization did not have one central political structure. What it had a city-based administration. And the city-based administration was very, very evolved. Why? How can we say that there is an administration in the city if I only have this building, then I may not be able to say. Why? Because this is a private property. But because there is a road downstairs, right? Because there is public transportation, because there is a bridge, so we know that there must be some public authority who is taking up the cause of common infrastructure, who is building some common infrastructure. Similarly, from Indus Valley civilization cities, we find many common infrastructure. Common infrastructure, for example, that because Indus Valley civilization had surplus agricultural production, for that reason, their biggest, their one target would be to store the surplus agricultural product, and therefore they would have storage houses. So in Indus Valley civilization, we find granaries, large number of granaries. That, for example, in the city of Mohenjo-daro, there is one big granary called Great Granary. तो जिसका surplus production बचा हुआ है, वो क्या करेगा? जाकर वहां पे store कर देगा. So that great granary must have been constructed by some public authority, some state authority. So the city of Mohenjo-daro had some kind of administration. but there was no common administration to all the cities like Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Kalibangan, etc. All the cities put together did not have one single common administration, right? So write down polity, absence of a single central authority, ya king, a single central authority which is king, that absence of a single central authority which is king, but well developed city based administration, well developed city based administration. Okay, that it had a well developed city based administration. Fourth, society. NCRT writes that by and large it had an equal society. By and large that it was a equal society. Equal society को बोलते हैं egalitarian, egalitarian society. Okay, equal society or egalitarian society. That means there was no social discrimination per se. Say for example, the discriminatory systems like the caste system, the Varna system, etc. These systems were not present in Indus Valley civilization, right? These systems were not present in Indus Valley civilization. Why? Because you know that the society was, these were basically Vedic civilization में ये discriminatory systems आना शुरू हुआ, that during the Indus Valley civilization that such discriminatory practices were not there in the society. So the society was by and large egalitarian in nature, equal in nature. But yes, that the priests and traders, they enjoyed certain privileges, enjoyed certain privileges. So for example, if you look at the tribal society of Arunachal Pradesh, say, I mean, there are certain forms of social discrimination, but when you compare that to, say, a caste-based society in other parts of India, then that the society is by and large egalitarian. Okay. But in every tribe, that obviously the status of the priest would be very high compared to the other members of the tribe. But it's not that there is a discrimination against other members. So that's what I'm trying to say, that by and large, it was free from any social discrimination. So I'm telling it that it was an egalitarian society. But then, yes, the status of the priest and the traders was high compared to the other people, right? The status of priests and traders was high compared to others. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to write, don't copy. I'll let you know. Some of the scholars write that probably Indus Valley civilization was matriarchal in nature. Matriarchy. That some of the scholars write, don't write it please, that the society was matriarchal in nature. Matri is mother, so woman. Arch is rule. होता है ना monarchy, rule of one single person. One person, monarch, monarchy. That the society was matriarchal. Why do they say? Because some of the other societies in the world were matriarchal, A, and B, that in the religious practices, the number of images of Mother Goddess are far, far more than the number of images of Pashupati, right? Proto Shiva, who was called as Proto Shiva. That the number of images of Pashupati are far, far high than the number of images of Pashupati, and therefore that this indicates the higher status of women in the society That is the assumption of some of the scholars. But then R. S. Sharma in the book NCRT, he rejects this claim. So he writes that Indus Valley civilization was not matriarchal. What was the first to know? That Indus Valley people did not know the use of iron. Indus Valley people did not use coins. Indus Valley civilization was not a matriarchal society. But if you read NCRT, you will find that R.S. Sharma shies away from writing that it was a patriarchal society. ऐसा कुछ नहीं लिखा. He just says that contrary to the claim made by some of the scholars that Indus Valley civilization was not a matriarchal society, right? Was not a matriarchal society. And the belief that if you have more number of female goddesses than male gods, that makes the society matriarchal is somewhat exaggeration, because probably even in the present day Hindu society that there are large number of female goddesses, that does not come down to that the status of women and men are equal, right? In fact, for example, you would know that there are certain societies in Northeast which are matrilineal in nature. Which society? The Khasi Hills, right? Matrilineal. But are they matriarchal? They are not matriarchal. Just that the lineage, matlab you draw your name, your surname from mother side. They are matrilineal, they are not matriarchal. Rule is by man itself, right? Just that the lineage, the surname, the family genealogy, it is traced from mother side, right? So even matrilineal society may not be matriarchal, right? Okay. Fifth, after polity and society, fifth, religion. Religion or religious practices. That they did not have any popular religion like Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, Buddhism. ऐसा कुछ नहीं था इस समय. That they were nature worshippers. So nature, that is plant and animal worship. And why is it that, I mean, almost every ancient civilization was nature worshipping? Because of two factors. That A, we derive our benefits from nature, and B, the forces of nature often intimidate us. डराते हैं हमें, है ना? डराते हैं. सडनली बहुत जोर से बारिश हुई, सडनली लाइटनिंग थंडर हुआ. फॉर एग्जाम्पल, नेचर वर्शिपर्स, दे इवन वर्शिप लाइटनिंग थंडर. वाई? बिकॉज दैट वाज अ सोर्स ऑफ फियर. तो वो पूजा करते थे उसका कि हमें माफ कर दो अगर कोई गलती हुआ. सो बिकॉज द फोर्सेस ऑफ नेचर ऑफन, they are a source of awe, fear, and they intimidate us, and therefore that we often worship the forces of nature. And that is how you see basically the human nature is to bow down जहां पे अपना फायदा हो या जहां पर डर लगता हो. That is what is human nature, yes or no? That is why that by nature that people were nature worshippers, by the very trait of human beings, that we were nature worshippers. Because even if you look at today, the human trait is that we bow down जहां पे हमारा फायदा हो रहा है ना? जहां पे हमारा फायदा हो रहा है, चार बात सुन के आ जाएंगे, है ना, कोई बात नहीं, आप ही सही. या फिर जहां पे हमें डर लगता है, there we will bow down. So nature was giving us benefit, and nature was also scaring us because of the forces of nature. So people were nature worshippers. Plants and animals were worshipped. Plants like people, animals like bull, the humped bull as well as the humpless bull. Hump होता है ना, जैसे camel का hump निकला होता है. So humped bull, humpless bull, right? Unicorn, these animals were worshipped. Bull was worshipped. So they were into nature worship. Indus Valley people, that their main goddess was mother goddess, and the main god was Pashupati, right? Pashupati was the most important male god, and mother goddess was the most important female goddess. But the number of images of whose is higher? mother goddess. The number of images of mother goddess is far, far higher than that of male god Pashupati. Okay. Mother goddess was made up of terracotta. Pashupati is depicted on seals. Seals were made up of steatite, a stone. Okay. Steatite stone. These images were not put in a temple. So the fourth no, that there was no temple in Indus Valley civilization. Indus Valley civilization did not have any temple. There was no temple in Indus Valley civilization. Okay. No temple in Indus Valley civilization. Okay. That they believed in good and bad spirit. They believed in good and bad spirit. And that is why they used to wear an amulet to keep the evil forces away. They used to wear an amulet to keep the evil forces away. And a very typical practice is to be seen. A very typical practice was seen, which is phallam worship. Phallam is sex organ. Phallam worship. So phallam basically it is sex organ. So the male phallam, which is ling, and the female phallam, which is yoni, was worshipped. Why? Because you know that human resource, that population is also an asset. Yes or no? Which communities traditionally are believed to be more dominating, that have high population, right? That more the number of people, higher the strength. So population was seen as an asset, and therefore the source of population, which is phallam, was also worshipped. And this is how you look at the kind of continuity that has existed in Indian culture. Although today is the second class and not the right time to talk about the mains, portion of exam. But ek baar just for your curiosity, that once a question came in UPSC that Indian culture has been a continuous culture comment. Religious practices are a part of culture, right? So not just nature worship, but even phallam worship, which existed during Indus Valley civilization, continues to exist till today. Yes or no? Can you give one example of phallam worship? Okay, and most popular, the worship of Shivling, right? Worship of Shivling, right? That when you worship Shiva, that it's the phallam worship that people perform, that Shivling is worshipped. So that is an element of continuity in Indian culture. Okay, your example is correct, but just that a more popular example of Shivling. Okay, so these were the religious practices of people of Indus Valley civilization. Sixth, and one of the most important, is town planning. Because of the elaborate town planning, that Indus Valley civilization was also called as an urban civilization. How was the town planning done? The town planning was done. Again, I would request you to be on the board, and then I will leave it as it is for 30 seconds, 1 minute, and then you can copy. Okay. So suppose if this is the town, then one side of the town, it comprised only of the public buildings. Public buildings, for example, say great granary, any assembly hall, right? Great bath, etc. Anything which would be used commonly by all the people. And on the other side, that we had the private residences. Private residence was on the other side. Generally, almost every city, except for one exception, that the city was divided into a lower town and an upper town. So there used to be an upper town as well. Suppose if this is the upper town, ये क्या होगा, थोड़ा raised होगा, right? Raised होगा. So suppose if this is the upper town, then privileged people will live over here. So they will have big houses. There would be proper spacing between the two houses. Okay. But when it comes to the lower town, the houses will be small, but yet identical. So even these houses were planned. Even these houses were planned. And they were planned in a manner that the roads, suppose agar ye road hai, the roads used to cut each other at 90 degree. The roads used to cut each other at 90 degree, thereby dividing the entire town into rectangular grid. So the roads used to cut each other at 90 degree. Roads cut each other at 90 degree at right angle, and therefore that it formed a rectangular grid like pattern. A rectangular grid pattern was formed. This was the kind of planning which was done. And then that, suppose beneath every house, that there was a drainage channel to collect wastewater. Drainage channel to collect wastewater, which will be collected at one end of the city, so that all the wastewater is is flown through one proper drainage channel. And the drains were not open drains. I said that the use of stone in Indus Valley civilization is very, very minimum. But at one place where we see the use of stone is that these drainage channels, they were covered with stone slabs. So you have drainage channel, the drainage channel to collect wastewater covered with stone slabs. Okay, that they are covered with stone slabs. The drainage channel were covered with the stone slabs so that the foul smell does not come out, right? You generally see mosquitoes breed on stagnant water, on wastewater, so that disease does not spread, because at one place we have evidence of malaria occurring in one of the Indus Valley civilization cities. So probably these measures were taken to ensure that diseases like malaria does not spread again. Okay, that the drainage channel was covered with a stone slab. Okay, in some of the cities we also find that there is a post lamp like structure in the end of the city, sorry, in the end of the street. At the very end of the street, that there is a post lamp like structure. It could not have been post lamp because electricity was not invented by then. So it is often written as a post lamp like structure. Okay, so there was a post lamp like structure. Some of the cities, every house had a well, right? And the houses were made up of obviously burnt bricks. So this was the kind of planning which was done in Indus Valley civilization, that the public buildings were on one side, the private residences were on the other side. The town was divided into an upper town and a lower town. The houses were identical. The upper town had bigger houses with greater spacing as compared to the lower town. The streets used to cut each other at 90 degree, thereby giving a rectangular grid-like structure to the entire city. Beneath every house, there was a drainage channel to collect the wastewater. The drainage channel was covered with stone slabs, right? So these are the elements of planning of Indus Valley civilization. And planning, again, just like trade and commerce, is an urban feature. It's an urban feature, and for that reason, that Indus Valley civilization is called an urban civilization, right? It is called an urban civilization. तो यहाँ से आपको जो लिखा हुआ है, you copy it, and then I'll give you some 4-5 line dictation. Copied. Write down. The public buildings were separated from the private residences. The public buildings were separate from private residences. The towns were divided into an upper town and a lower town. The towns were divided into an upper town and a lower town. The upper town had bigger buildings with greater space. Compared to the lower towns. Compared to the lower towns. Full stop. The upper towns had bigger building and greater space compared to the lower town. Okay. The roads cut each other at 90 degree. The roads cut each other at 90 degree, thereby giving a rectangular grid-like pattern, thereby giving a rectangular grid-like pattern, thereby giving a rectangular grid-like pattern to the entire city. Okay, drainage channel तो आपने लिख लिया होगा. Okay. In fact, if you look at some of the cities, for example, in India, that there are two cities which are planned. Chandigarh was one of the earliest of the planned cities in India. Again, if you go to the, if you Google search Chandigarh city map and click on image, you will find that the entire city looks like a rectangular grid-like pattern. After class, you can search Chandigarh city map and you will find that entire city looks like a rectangular grid-like pattern. One rectangle being one of the sectors, right? So it is divided into rectangular grid-like patterns. So something that happened in modern India was done by the people of Indus Valley civilization back in 2500 before Christ. Seventh, say language and script. Language and script. The language of Indus Valley people is unknown. So whatever we find, any kind of a written script that we see, we are not able to understand. We are not able to decipher the language. We are not able to make sense of what is written on it. Say, for example, I'll tell you. Are you aware of Ashokan inscriptions? Ashokan inscriptions. Ashoka ने अपने बारे में rock pieces या pillars के ऊपर अपने बारे में लिखा. But then that was written in a language called Prakrit. And Prakrit was written in a different script, Brahmi. That Brahmi script was not known to Indians. Over a period of time, it became extinct. वो आता नहीं था. For example, see, it is possible that you know a language, but you don't know the script. Yes or no? So it is possible that some of us would be reasonably good in Hindi, right? In speaking Hindi, but in reading we are very slow. और राइटिंग में शायद और भी स्लो. वाई? बिकॉज वो स्क्रिप्ट की फेमिलियरिटी उतनी स्ट्रांग नहीं है ना. एंड स्पेशली व्हेन यू सी दैट टुडे व्हेन यू वी यूज हिंदी, बट देन वो व्हाट्सएप में हिंदी लिखने के लिए वी आर यूजिंग द इंग्लिश स्क्रिप्ट, द रोमन स्क्रिप्ट. Over a period of time, it is quite possible that the language of Hindi may remain to be continuous, but the script of Devanagari, right, may get lost. राइट. वही प्रॉब्लम था प्राकृत लैंग्वेज के साथ कि वो लैंग्वेज तो पता था लोगों को, लेकिन प्राकृत जिस स्टाइल में लिखा जाता था अशोका के टाइम में, That script people did not know, and it was a British officer by the name of, anybody? James Prinsep. There was a British officer, James Prinsep, who could decode what is written on the Ashokan inscriptions. That is how today we know about Ashokan history in detail. So over here also we find certain script, but we are not able to know that what is the meaning of this, and therefore the language is unknown. Language is not known to us, but the script is pictographic. Pictographic. Pictures बने हुए हैं. The most widely used symbol is that of a fish. The most widely used symbol is that of a fish. And the style of writing is very, very unique. Look at the style of writing, that it is very unique. So suppose this is the left margin, this is the right margin. Generally, for example, that languages like Hindi and English are written from left to right. Urdu, Persian, Arabic are written from right to left. But Indus Valley people, if they wrote the first line from left to right, they did not bother to again come back to the left margin. They would write from the right side itself in the reverse direction, then from left to right, then from right to left. So in alternate layers of left to right, right to left. They wrote in alternate layers of left to right and right to left. This technique of writing, this technique of writing is called as the Bostrophodon technique of writing. This is called as the Bostrophodon technique. Eighth, weights and measures. Why are we even talking about weights and measures? Weights and measures की क्यों बात कर रहे हैं? Because economy was based on trade and commerce. For trade and commerce, that you need to have standard weight, standard measure. Yes or no? For example, today, if 1 kg in Arunachal is 800 gram and in Assam is 600 gram, there will be a big burden, there will be a big hurdle, a big barrier in the trade between Arunachal and Assam. So because of that, that entire Indus Valley civilization with so many cities used a standard weight and measure. For example, for length measurement, they used to use a standard stick. For weight के लिए क्या करते थे? That initial weights, they were in multiples of 2. Initial weights were in the multiples of 2, but then the higher weights, they were in multiples of 16. They were in multiples of 16. So I'll tell you, for example, if you have gone to the market where a mechanical weighing balance is used, not the digital balance. Nowadays, we have a digital balance. But in case of mechanical balance, you will see that you don't have weights of every weight. For example, you will have a 100 gram. You might have a 200 gram. But have you ever seen a 300 gram weight? No. You will see the weight of 1 kg, 2 kg. लेकिन 4 kg का कोई weight देखा है वो? नहीं. 4 kg के लिए क्या करते हैं? दो 2 kg का weight डालेंगे, है ना? We have seen 5 kg, but you will never find a 6, 7 kg weight. So these are the standard practices today. Back then, initial weights would be in multiple of 2. That means एक stone लिया, दूसरा बड़ा stone, उससे twice the weight होगा. तीसरा बड़ा stone, उससे twice the weight होगा, right? लेकिन for higher weights, for example, higher, if you go to a big dealer, wholesale market, तो वहाँ क्या होगा? 500 kg, 1000 kg, ऐसे. So higher weights were in the multiple of 16. Okay. Next, the burial practices. They had multiple burial practices. multiple burial practices, right from half burial. That means that the body was burnt half and then buried, half burial, और coffin burial, coffin के अंदर डाल के, pot burial, pot के अंदर डालकर, or even double burial, that is two people buried at the same place. So there was no one unique way of burial. There were multiple burial practices, and there was some dedicated burial sites as well. For example, in the city of Harappa, that we had dedicated burial sites like cemetery. Cemetery is a place of burial. Cemetery H and Cemetery R37. These are sites named by modern day scholar. उस समय H37 नहीं होगा. So at present these are called as Cemetery H and Cemetery R37. Okay, these were the cemeteries, so places of burial. And burial practices क्या है? Multiple burial practices, half burial, double burial, pot burial, coffin burial, all kinds of burial. Okay. 10th and the last, when we are seeing that we have an Indus Valley civilization which is geographically spread over a large area, which is economically prosperous, which is politically very well organized city-wise. Socially, it was by and large egalitarian, right? We have modern, modern measures. We have very modern practice like town planning. How did it come to an end? That what is the theory of decline? That what led to the decline of Indus Valley civilization? That what led to the decline of Indus Valley civilization? Okay, wonderful, both to your knowledge and to your confidence. Appreciate both. Okay, that what she said is perfectly right. That there are different theories of, right? There are different theories of the decline of Indus Valley civilization, right? But then allow me to add a couple of more points over there. Okay. One of the theories of the decline of Indus Valley civilization, that scholars say that either Indus Valley civilization had a sudden decline, तुरंत खत्म हो गया. So one theory is called as the sudden decline theory. Others say that it did not decline all of a sudden, that there was a gradual decline of Indus Valley civilization. That there was no sudden decline of Indus Valley civilization, that there was a gradual decline of Indus Valley civilization. It was not all of a sudden. Okay, it happened in a gradual manner. Those who believe that it was a sudden decline, they say that it could have been because of, as she said, natural calamity. Natural calamity. Do we have any evidence? Yes. For example, that floods were very common, so it could have been a flood. In fact, we see a city called Dholavira. पढ़ेंगे हम लोग जब list of cities पढ़ेंगे, that there was a city called the city of Dholavira. In the city of Dholavira in Gujarat, it lies on a fault line. Now, over here. Now, that is one thing, that I would like to be mindful, because if you would have studied geography, then I don't need to explain. Anybody who knows what is a fault line? See the earth. So it is, it is divided into different, like what you will study as a plate tectonic theory. Plate tectonic theory, that the continental as well as the oceanic crust, the topmost part of the earth, that the oceanic as well as the continental crust is divided into multiple plates. You'd know that earth earlier was one solid piece. सारे continents एक तरफ थे और water bodies एक साथ था, what was called as a Pangea, right? And then that they broke apart, and even today that at some places they are drifting or coming close to each other. For example, if you see that this northeastern part of South America it appears to fit perfectly into the southwestern part of Africa. Yes or no? That it appears to fit perfectly over here. So earlier they would have been together. We know that, for example, that the African plate was, for example, that we had an Eurasian plate, an Indian plate, African plate. When they moved together, there was a Tethys Sea. और जब दो प्लेट के बीच में वाटर बॉडी था, the two plates they came together, तो सी का जितना मटेरियल था that got thrown up, right? And that is how we have the mighty Himalayas today, right? So the earth plates, they keep on moving, and that is one reason for earthquake. Dholavira, it happens to be on a fault line. Fault line मतलब जहां पर दो प्लेट आपस में आके मिल रहा है. So there is a greater chance of earthquake happening at a place where the two plates are meeting, right? So Dholavira happens to be on a fault line, and therefore the city was probably destroyed by an earthquake. So we have evidences that probably natural calamity resulted into the decline of Indus Valley civilization, some of the cities. For example, Demabad in Maharashtra, Kot DG in Maharashtra is believed to have been destroyed by forest fire. So natural calamity. So natural calamity could be a reason. Then second, any endemic disease. Any endemic disease, कोई ऐसा disease जो Indus Valley civilization में आया हो. We have evidences of malaria in Mohenjo-daro. There are evidences of malaria in Mohenjo-daro. So again, that endemic disease could be a reason for the decline of Indus Valley civilization. That a disease came and all of a sudden the civilization came to an end. Third, what is called as the barbaric invasion. The barbaric Aryan invasion. That there was a barbaric invasion by the Aryans who were warriors. Indus Valley people were not warriors, they were traders, right? They were farmers and traders. And Aryans, they were animal rearers, they were wandering people, they were more warrior like. The Aryans, they came from Central Asia. The breed of horses in Central Asia is very, very of superior quality. So they came on horses, they were excellent horse riders, they were warriors, they were brilliant archers. है ना, घोड़ा चलाते हुए they could fire a arrow. They were brilliant archers, they were warriors, and they came from Central Asia to India. If you are coming from Central Asia to India, then obviously you are coming from this region, from the mountain passes of यहाँ पे mountains को बोलते हैं Hindu Kush mountains. From the mountain passes, when they enter to the northwest of India, whom will they meet first? The people of Indus Valley civilization. So it is believed that the Aryans who started coming around 1600 before Christ, so some of the Aryans would have come earlier, and they being warriors, they were able to defeat the people of Indus Valley civilization, and they brought an end to the Indus Valley civilization. When I say that, do I have an evidence? The evidences are that many of the skeletons which have been excavated from Mohenjo-daro, that their limbs are pierced, probably that an arrow hit or a javelin hit. But the number of such you know skeletons are very, very limited and are only to be found in Mohenjo-daro. So some of the scholars say that no, this Aryan invasion theory is wrong, because had it been so it would have been in multiple cities and the number of skeletons would have been very, very high. But then there are certain mentions in the Vedas. For example, the Vedas mention their hero, their god, by a name which is called as Purandhar. The Vedas mention their god, their hero, by a name called Purandhar, Purandher. अभी नहीं लिख रहा हूं क्योंकि वैदिक एज पढ़ेंगे तो उस समय लिखेंगे. Purandhar. Purandhar is a Sanskrit word. Purandhar is a Sanskrit word which means destroyer of fort, F-O-R-T. Purandhar is a Sanskrit word which means destroyer of forts, जो किलों को तोड़ता हो, किला, fort. The Aryans were rural people, and nowhere else in the world there was a two-story building. So when Aryans come to Indus Valley for the first time, they saw a two-storied building, right? For the first time that they saw a two-storied building. और जिसने उन buildings को तोड़ा होगा, probably was called as Purandhar, the one who destroyed the forts, right? The one who destroyed the forts. So he was called as Purandhar. There are other evidences as well. For example, that वेदास में, ऋग वेदा में एक स्टोरी लिखा हुआ है कि जब आर्यंस क्रॉस कर रहे हैं नदी के किनारे, वो देखते हैं कि एक राक्षस है जिसने अपने पास पानी रोक के रखा हुआ है. That there is a demon who has held water, and therefore the flow of water is obstructed. पानी villages तक नहीं जा पा रहा है. So the Aryan hero Purandhar, he defeated that demon, that Rakshas, and restored the flow of water. Basically, Indus Valley people, especially in Dholavira, they used to make dams, embankments. Probably that these dams which were holding water, and Aryans had a culture of personification of the forces of nature. Personification. हर किसी को वो एक आदमी बना देते थे. For example, that Aryans were nature worshippers. Aryans used to worship sun, है ना? Sun, Surya. But then they also believe that the sun is a person in the sky, right? The sun had a son, S-U-N, had a S-O-N in Mahabharata, whose name was Karna, right? So they believe that the source of nature, that the forces of nature are humans as well. इसको बोलते हैं personification, personification of the forces of nature. So what they did was a personification of the forces of nature. So probably they also personified the dam by calling it a, ये राक्षस है, इसने पानी रोक के रखा है, और उन्होंने डैम तोड़ दिया होगा, the flow of water would have restored. So these evidences point to the fact. Details में question नहीं आते, आपके question बस इतना आएगा, which of the following are the reasons for the decline of Indus Valley civilization. But probably I believe that if I tell you such stories, then you will tend to remember this point in a better manner, right? Okay. So barbaric Aryan invasion theory. But then there is a time gap of almost around 100 years when the Vedic civilization ended and when the Indus Valley civilization ended and the Vedic civilization had started. Therefore, some of these scholars, and also that this is a big source of controversy because of the Aryan Dravidian divide in the country at times. The Dravidian scholars, they say that the Aryans, they don't want to take the blame of, bringing an end to one of the most prosperous civilizations of India. So they refute this barbaric Aryan invasion theory, because most of the population today in the northern part of the country, they claim to be the descendants of the Aryans. Therefore, that they don't want to take the blame on themselves of bringing an end to the Indus Valley civilization. So they refute this theory. That is the allegation of the other scholars. Okay, but then there are evidences in support of this theory as well. The gradual decline theory says that over exploitation of resources, this resulted into ecological disturbance or environmental degradation. Ecological disturbance or environmental degradation. Okay, ecological disturbance or environmental degradation. And because of this, that the surplus agriculture which was earlier achieved, that surplus agriculture no longer remained surplus. That because of that, the surplus agriculture no longer remained surplus. Therefore, if there is no surplus, will there be trade and commerce? No, the trade and commerce, it declined. So urban way of life, it declined, and therefore people started migrating back to the villages. People started migrating back to the villages, and therefore the Indus Valley civilization, it came to an end, right? That people started migrating back to the villages, and therefore the Indus Valley civilization, it came to an end. Fine, am I clear? Okay. So that is how that we have covered the geography, the economy, the polity, society, religion, the other aspects of Indus Valley civilization, leading to the decline, to the end of Indus Valley civilization, right? So all these were the reasons for the decline of Indus Valley civilization. Okay. Now we will talk about the list of cities of Indus Valley civilization. That which all cities were excavated, which are the prominent cities of Indus Valley civilization. List of Indus Valley civilization cities. Say first, Harappa. And Harappa was the earliest of the city to be excavated. The first city to be excavated was Harappa. This was excavated by Dayaram Sahani, and this is as late as, this is very recent, 1921 का excavation है. Okay, Dayaram Sahani. That as this was the first, so you can remember the name of the excavator. Okay. Now, what all things do we find from Harappa? क्या क्या हमें मिला है हरप्पा में? From Harappa, we find 2 rows of 6 granaries each. मतलब सपोज एक रोड के एक साइड में 6 ग्रेनरी है. ग्रेनरी इज वेयर यू स्टोर फूड ग्रेन्स, और रोड के दूसरे साइड 6 ग्रेनरी है. सो 2 rows of 6 granaries each. ऑल्सो दैट देर वॉज अ बैरक फॉर हाउसिंग लेबर. इसका मतलब कोई कंस्ट्रक्शन काम यहां पर होता होगा. वाई? बिकॉज देर वॉज अ बैरक फॉर हाउसिंग लेबर. There was a barrack for housing labor, so that it shows that there must be, construction works going on a very regular basis. Further, from Harappa, we also see, this is important, we find a red sandstone. We find a red sandstone image of the torso of a nude male. Torso is the upper half of the body, waist and above. Torso of a nude male. And apart from this, from the city of Harappa, we also find cemetery H, the place of burial, cemetery H and cemetery R37. So these are the things, important things that were excavated from Harappa. Talking about the second city, which is Mohenjo-daro. Mohenjo-daro it was excavated by R.D. Banerjee. Okay, Mohenjo-daro it was excavated by R.D. Banerjee. R.D. Banerjee. And Mohenjo-daro, in fact, this is a Sindhi word. This is a Sindhi word. This is a word in Sindhi language. In fact, both Harappa and Mohenjo-daro are in present-day Pakistan. So this is a Sindhi word, and the meaning of the Sindhi word is mound of dead. It has been asked in APPSCC once. Mound of dead. Why? Because when Mohenjo-daro was excavated, there was a huge pile of dead bodies that was excavated from here. When Mohenjo-daro was excavated, there was a huge pile of dead bodies which was excavated from Mohenjo-daro. So that is why the city got its name, because the Sindhi word for mound of dead, this is in Sindh region of Pakistan. So Mohenjo-daro. And why do we have the mound of dead? Because from here itself, we find evidences of Aryan invasion. When I say evidences of Aryan invasion का मतलब the pierced ribs of skeletons. जो skeleton यहाँ से मिले, उसके ribs pierced थे. The pierced ribs of the skeletons that were excavated. Aryan invasion, we also find evidences of flood, so people dying out of flood, and we also find evidences of people dying out of malaria. Okay, people dying out of malaria. We find from Mohenjo-daro that we find the Pashupati seal. The Pashupati seal. From Mohenjo-daro, we find, now these are important things, that great granary. In Harappa, we had 2 rows of 6 granary each, but in Mohenjo-daro, we had one great granary, and this great granary was the largest building of Indus Valley civilization. This great granary, it was the largest building of Indus Valley civilization. Okay, that is why star mark within bracket. The largest building of Indus Valley civilization was the Great Granary. But we also see another structure called Great Bath. Great Bath. ये कैसा था? There was a water tank-like structure, and 2 holes were made. Water used to continuously seep out of the 2 holes, and there were 2 changing rooms at the corner. There were 2 changing rooms at the corner. Okay, this was the Great Bath. But coincidentally, in every house of Mohenjo-daro, that every house had a well. Every house had a well. So when every house had a well, what is the need for a great bath? It is believed that probably great bath was used for some ritualistic bathing. पता ना बहुत बार ritual करने के लिए people take a dip in the river, in the pond. So it was for ritualistic bathing probably. Why? Because or else there would be no sense of a great bath when every house has a well. है ना, जब पानी घर में ही है, पानी निकालने का facility घर में है, so why go to a great bath? Okay, so it had a great bath. Next, that what are the things which are found from Mohenjo-daro? We find a steatite image. Steatite क्या है? Stone है. A steatite stone image of bearded priest. जिस priest की दाढ़ी है, bearded priest. Stone image of a bearded priest. Okay, and also we find the bronze image. Bronze में किस किस चीज का image है? Of a dancing girl. Last year's UPSC question. Bronze image of a dancing girl. Bronze image of a bullock cart. We find a bronze needle. So all these things are in bronze. There are two important statues which are not in bronze. One is that of a torso of a nude male. The second is the image of the bearded priest, right? And then you have the Pashupati and Mother Goddess also, which are not in bronze. Okay, which are not in bronze. So these things are found in Mohenjo-daro. One very important thing which is to be found in Mohenjo-daro is that from here we get three cylindrical seals of Mesopotamia. Cylindrical seals were of Mesopotamia. So we get three cylindrical seals of Mesopotamia. कैसा लगेगा? वो cylindrical रहेगा, like this. Three cylindrical seals of Mesopotamia we get from Mohenjo-daro. Third city. Third is Kalibangan. Kalibangan is in Rajasthan. Now see, Kalibangan. Kali means black or burnt. Black or burnt. Whereas Bangan means bangles. So probably that burnt bangles were made over here. And a bangle को burn करके बनाया जाता होगा. So this place got the name Kalibangan because of burnt bangles that were made over here. Kalibangan is known for modern agricultural practices. Modern agriculture was practiced in Kalibangan. Okay. That modern agricultural practices, modern agriculture was practiced in Kalibangan. Okay. For example, that we have evidence of plowed field. और कहीं भी plowed field नहीं मिला है. But we have evidences of plowed field at Kalibangan, जिसका plowing किया हुआ है ना, tilling, plowing, leveling. So plowed field at Kalibangan. We also have evidences of mixed cropping. I'm sure you know the meaning of mixed cropping. What is meant by mixed cropping? Just now you said yes. What is meant by mixed cropping? Different crops in the same agricultural field at the same time. Why do we do mixed cropping? To save land. Sorry? How? Fertility, correct, but how? How do you restore? And don't worry, I will not talk anything which is not required for exam. You have to study an agricultural economics. You have to study general science, etc. So yes, why so? Anybody? It's because any agriculture student in the class. अब तो हाथ नहीं उठाओगे, but still. कोई है agriculture वाला? Nobody is an agriculture graduate in the class. Don't tell me. Tomorrow I'll let you know who is the agriculture graduate. I will check all the forms tonight. तो आप fill किए होंगे ना? And I'll let you know who is the agriculture graduate tomorrow. Okay. So any agricultural crop, it absorbs nitrogen from the soil. Nitrogen. And there is one type of crop which fixes nitrogen back to the soil. Which plants are those plants? Leguminous plants, legumes. For example, pulses, and a moong, etc. Pulses. So that is why that with any other regular crop, one or two strip of a leguminous plant is grown so that when the regular crop extracts a lot of nitrogen from the soil, that the the leguminous plant is able to put back nitrogen to the soil. नहीं तो बहुत बार आप देखा होगा बस्ती में क्या होता है, खेती होता है फिर बोलता है पिछले साल खेती हुआ है, इस साल इस लैंड को ऐसे ही छोड़ दो, so that the land is able to recover its nitrogen from the surrounding. But if people practice mixed cropping, then probably you will not have to leave the land fallow for one season, right? Okay, so mixed cropping was practiced by people of Kalibangan, and from Kalibangan we find an absence of mother goddess image, absence of mother goddess images. Everywhere else we find images of mother goddess, but over here we see an absence of mother goddess images. Okay, and the last, from here we find one cylindrical Mesopotamian seal, one cylindrical seal of Mesopotamia. Okay, one cylindrical seal of Mesopotamia. Fourth, Lothal. Lothal is in Gujarat. Lothal, it's a coastal city, so world's first artificial dockyard. World's first artificial dockyard. It is a it's a tidal port. Tides, समंदर में tides आते हैं. It's on the tide, so it's a tidal port. Okay, it's a tidal port. Lothal, world's first artificial dockyard. And in Lothal also we see that there is evidence of rice cultivation. Evidence of rice cultivation. In fact, rice cultivation was in the city Lothal plus one more city, Rangpur. Lothal and Rangpur. Fifth city is Surkotada, again in Gujarat. Surkotada over here, that remains of horse bones have been found. Remains of horse bones. This is mentioned in NCERT that remains of horse bones were found. UPSC once asked a question that Indus Valley people were aware of horses, true or false? Those who read only the NCERT, they made a logical guess that if remains of horses are found, remains of horses bones are found, then probably they were aware of horses. But then UPSC answer key and some of the higher books, when you read, they will say that this is not even confirmed that whether it was a horse or any other animal in the horse family. You know, you have animals in the same family, for example, say cats and tigers, they're all the cat family, right? So whether it was horse or whether it was another animal in the cat family, that is also not known. And even if bone remains are found, then it is not necessary that they were aware of horses. Why it is accepted that they were not aware of horses? Because that is one reason that supports that IBC people were easily defeated by the Aryans, because Aryans were excellent horse riders, but that IBC people were not horse riders, and there is, had they been aware of horses, then probably horse driven cart, क्योंकि वो ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स करते थे, तो हॉर्स ड्रिवन कार्ट के बारे में पक्का मेंशन होता. बुलक कार्ट का इमेज मिलता है लेकिन हॉर्स ड्रिवन कार्ट का इमेज नहीं मिलता है. So over here within bracket write down, as per the UPSC answer key, IBC people were not aware of horses. Were not aware of horses. Okay. And one more point you can write down, that the city of Surkotada, it was the only city with a stone wall fortification. With a stone wall fortification. Okay, this was the only city with a stone wall fortification. Next city, sixth, Banwali. Banwali, it was an oval settlement. So Banwali was not rectangular. Banwali was a oval city. So if it is an oval city, it is difficult to have a rectangular grid-like pattern. So therefore, they went for radial streets. Radial streets. So it was an oval settlement with radial streets. Banwali. Seventh, Chanudaro. Chanudaro again in Gujarat. That Chanudaro, over here we find an absence of upper town. So there was no upper town. That means there was no citadel, no raised platform. Okay, there was no raised platform. There was no upper town. Okay. Eighth, the last among the prominent cities. Eighth, Dholavira. Dholavira again in Gujarat. That from Dholavira we found a 10 alphabet sign board. तो स्क्रिप्ट जो दिखता है कि फिश क्या है, एक लाइन में फिश का मुंह अगर इस तरफ खुल रहा है तो दूसरे लाइन में फिश का फेस दूसरी तरफ खुल रहा है. So pointing that once it was written from left to right, other time it was written from right to left, right? So 10 alphabet sign board. We also see a big middle town. यहां पर एक मिडिल टाउन भी था. And Dholavira, that it is most famous for the irrigation facilities like dams, irrigation facility like dam, reservoir, है ना, embankment, etc. Embankment होता है ना, दीवार बना के पानी को रोका जो जाता है, that is embankment. Embankment, etc. And how was this city destroyed? This city was destroyed by earthquake. That the city was destroyed by an earthquake. Okay. That the city was probably destroyed by an earthquake. These are the prominent cities. One more city you can write, ninth. Yes. Dholavira, Dholavira. So Dholavira, it is a city in Gujarat. Okay. That from here we find 10 alphabet signboard. Dholavira, we see a open middle town. एक बड़ा सा एक stadium like structure है. Middle town है वहां पर. And then it had irrigation facility like dam, reservoir, embankments. And this city was probably destroyed by an earthquake. Why? Because it lies on a fault line where two plate boundaries interact. And Dholavira is the only Indian Indus Valley Civilization city which has got UNESCO World Heritage Site status. UNESCO World Heritage Site status. I will mention two more cities over here. One, Kot DG. This is in Maharashtra. This was destroyed by forest fire. This was destroyed by forest fire. And with a star mark, the largest city of Indus Valley civilization. Remember, earlier it was earlier it was Mohenjo-daro, but now after 2016, that Rakhi Garhi in Haryana, Rakhi Garhi in Haryana is the largest city of Indus Valley civilization. Rakhi Garhi in Haryana, India is the largest city of Indus Valley civilization. is the largest city of Indus Valley civilization? Should I share the question right away or घर पे जाके रिवाइज करके फिर? Yes, obviously आप मतलब दो. Okay, fine. Let's stick to the time schedule. So I'll be posting the question by evening. Okay, 10 more questions from Indus Valley civilization. I will post in the evening, right? And to have a better sense of discipline, I will post the question. I will post the answer late night itself, right? So that when I send you the question, please make sure that you answer within the next 1 hour. But don't post your answer. ऐसा नहीं ग्रुप में अपना आंसर ये सब मत पोस्ट करने का जरूरत है. We will try and keep the group very clean, है ना? No unnecessary talks over there, nothing. No non academic talks. आज क्लास होगा या नहीं होगा, unless and until informed, you will have classes every day except for Sunday, right? Except for Sunday. Unless and until informed, you have classes every day. Okay. So let it only be for, you know, if you if anybody finds a good article, etc., to share, you can share over there, right? Besides that, let's keep it very, very clean. Okay. Okay then. Anything from your side? Nothing. Are you, adjusting to the pace of the class? Yes or no? Feel very free to say no also, every time it need not be yes as an answer. Okay, okay then. Thank you. Yes, please.